What do you think about when you hear movie rentals? Do you think about Blockbuster? Do you think about Hollywood videos? Do you think about family videos? My first thought is Blockbuster, for sure. That's my first thought. If you think like me, what was your first memory of Blockbuster? What was your last memory of Blockbuster? My first memory was first time I even seen a movie that had the logo of Blockbuster on it was when I was a kid living in the Bronx, where my mom rented a movie called, I think it was called King of New York. At the time, I was too young to see it, so it wasn't for me. So I never got to watch it, but I got to hear it. I got to hear most of the movie in the room, and I so wanted to see it, but I didn't get the chance. At that time, not only did I not get the chance to see the movie, but I never had the chance to even walk into a Blockbuster. It just didn't happen. It wasn't until I became a young man when I actually walked into a Blockbuster. Actually, here in the state of Florida, when I first moved down here, my aunts and uncles, they rented from there. So I did get to go. My cousins rented from there. So I got the feeling of walking around down the aisles and looking at different um, video cassettes or VHS and looking at the covers and just thinking, is this movie as good as the cover looks? And so on and so forth. And that's my memory. I don't know. I think Blockbuster was awesome at the time. It was the most well known place to go to rent. Some people have bad memories of Blockbuster. Some people have some distaste with Blockbuster. And and sometimes I think about some of the comments that I've heard throughout some of these researches that I did in regards to some people's opinion of Blockbuster situation in regards to their rental rules of returning movies on time and the actions that they take with the individuals that rent movies and not return them on time. There's a late fee. There's a late fee. And I've heard over and over again, I don't like, and I don't like, and I don't like, and I don't like. Well, I don't like paying rent. I don't like paying light bill. I don't like having to pay for that little tag in the back of my license plate every year on my birthday. But there are consequences to not doing any of that you don't like. And those consequences are late fees. And if you don't pay your late fees, then there are other consequences to that as well. So the complaint that apparently I don't like late fees, I think that's so dumb, and that's the real reason why people kind of had a bad taste with Blockbuster. How do you think that they're going to have the product in stores if people are going to bring the movies whenever they want? You have to say, hey, you need to bring it on 2 days, 3 days, or if not, the consequence is this. So that way they will bring it. If not, they just don't care. And that was one of many things that unfortunately caused Blockbuster to no longer exist. Not so much the late fee, but the decision to take it away and then put it back. That was one of the biggest reasons. Now, a lot of people are going to say, no, it was Netflix. No, it was this. No, it was that. No, no. The biggest reason why.
But the main thing that drove me to do it is I really got tired of hearing, oh, Blockbuster went away because of Netflix. there was so much more to the story, and you really had to go back to the beginning to understand how Blockbuster was founded, the culture that was developed, and how they were not able to adapt to all the various challenges that came along. It wasn't just Netflix; it was other video stores, it was Walmart, it was grocery stores, it was Netflix, and later on it was Redbox. There was all kinds of challenges that Blockbuster faced along the way beyond what Netflix was. And the Netflix that we know today didn't exist for the majority of that time. The Netflix was a DVD renter, just like Blockbuster was. Netflix used what they learned renting DVDs to build the largest entertainment company in the world now, in Netflix. So Blockbuster was a bigger renter of DVDs, yet they weren't able to successfully make that transition. There's all kinds of lessons to be learned from that, and I really wanted to tell the complete story instead of they're just this persistent narrative. Oh yeah, Blockbuster failed because they didn't transition to streaming.
Blockbuster no longer exists right now was a series of bad decisions. A series of bad decisions. First off, let's rewind. Let's go back in time. Did you know that the first video store was in 1977? It was opened in Los Angeles, California. And it was a guy by the name of George Atkins. He opened the first VHS rental store. Atkins also bought 50 movies from Magnetic Video Corporation. And he also created a membership system, and which changed the way of watching films. It wasn't until 1980 that Blockbuster made it to the scene. Founded by David Cook in 1985, Blockbuster was quickly rising, quickly known, mainly for their blue and yellow colors that their stores had, and the image of corporate that they basically blew up all over the world. And when I say all over the world, yes, they opened so many stores that they were everywhere. But along those lines, there were other people that were trying to dip in the market. There were other people that were already in the market prior to Blockbuster, the mom and pop stores. Those mom and pop stores, they had to go through the trials of being sued by the movie companies because they thought that they were being um, unfair, because rental places should not have the right to rent their movies. And although they sued them and they went to court and it was a lot of back and forth, they lost. And due to a law that was implemented at that time, people were able to rent movies. Uh, Moneymaker at the time, because not many people could afford a VHS for $60 to $80, which is that's what the movie companies were selling them for, purposely, because they wanted people to have to go to the theaters to go watch the movies. And part of the reason why they sued these mom and pop stores was because they thought that they were dipping into their tickets sales. So it originally started in 1977. Blockbuster came aboard in 1980, opened their first store in 1985. And it just went from there. But there was other people, even during the time that Blockbuster was out there, that were actually doing the same business with a different name. For example, there's a guy named Alan Payne, which you'll see who this guy is. Has really good insight of what happened in the world of rental.
Particularly, our gross margins actually went up as VHS transitioned to DVD, and
Uh,
that is a, I think, probably the biggest part of the whole story, because when the business started switching from VHS to DVD in 1997, and by around 2004 the transition was complete, the it completely changed the business, because DVD it was go back to the $65 video cassettes. That essentially created what we called a rental window. Walmart was not going to buy those and mark them up and sell them for $80 or $90 to customers. So the only people that bought those movies were rental stores. Okay, so we had them as much as 6 months before mass merchants would have them for sale, because what they would do is 6 months later they'd lower the price to go into what they call the sell-through window. When DVD came along, everything came out for sale. If you remember, Lion King, all that stuff was coming out in DVD, and you could buy it anywhere for around $20. We bought it wholesale for about $17. Well, think about that. We were paying as much as $60+ for most of the movies in the 90s, and all of a sudden our cost is $17. So we used that to buy more movies, have better availability, and improve our gross margins. And that's what allowed us to succeed. Now, the DVD was created to kill the video store, really, because the studios wanted to get their money off of selling direct to consumer versus selling to video stores, because they were only making about $1.50 off of a rent, but they were making about $14-15 off of the sale of a DVD. The good news is that even though that transition from VHS to DVD kind of flatlined the growth of the rental business, it didn't send it into decline. It stayed pretty flat. In fact, there was some years in there where it actually grew a little bit, even though Walmart essentially became a direct competitor. And every mass merchant in the country, every supermarket in the country was a direct competitor with Blockbuster because of DVD. And here's the other two things. DVD was such a small, convenient package, it allowed mailing them to customers. That's what started Netflix. Netflix started as a by mail DVD company. Later on, DVD allowed kiosk vending machines to come along. It was never possible with cassettes. So DVD allowed the creation of Netflix and later Redbox, and it also made every mass merchant in the country a direct competitor. So the business just flipped totally.
Is specifically what happened during the time of Blockbuster, because he became a franchise partner with them, a franchise owner of 3 or 4 different Blockbusters. But Alan Payne got a phone call from a friend of his that owned a couple of franchise.
In perspective, there were about 30 Blockbuster stores at the time. I didn't make the decision to get into Blockbuster until after I had really learned the business at HEB. We competed with Blockbuster for 7 years. And from 1987 up until 1993. And that's kind of why I look at the business differently, because we had to learn how to beat them, which we did very, very successfully. We never opened a store against Blockbuster that we didn't do at least twice what they were doing in volume.
Alan basically took that upon himself and basically started implementing some of the stuff that he did while he worked at HEB. And he succeeded. So much so that when Blockbuster ended up having to go into bankruptcy, Alan Payne had still his 3 stores open almost till 2018. where a lot of the corporate stores closed after they announced bankruptcy. They closed, I think, within 2 to 3 years after 2010. And Allen managed to have his business open with the name of Blockbuster because he was still a franchise owner till 2018. So that has a lot to say about how this guy really ran the business. He has a lot to say about what happened with Blockbuster, where they dropped the ball, how they could have pivoted, how they could have adapted, where the changes needed to happen. But unfortunately, from his words, they weren't listening. They didn't care.
Some financial constraints put on them when they spun off. They got saddled with a lot of debt from Viacom. That had an impact on their ability to do the things they wanted to do. And I think Blockbuster struggled in that time frame to really figure out what was going to work best for them going forward.
They didn't know where they wanted to go, which direction. And that's the way I thought it, because they're always changing things around. Like there'll be times where they're, giving an idea they wanted to open up, they wanted to have a little deli stand or a little, coffee and all that. And they committed to it and it didn't work, but when they committed completely to it. And that's a lot of money to commit to where something that fails. And they wanted to get into the media business and sell TVs and DVD players and Blu-rays. And once again, you only have so much of an area. So to sell that off, you have to take away something. So you're taking away your rental business. Well, Blockbuster's a rental business. So when you take that away, it's going to affect something, And when it doesn't give you that money that you're expecting, and yet now your movies are declining.
If you know the end of late fee story, that was kind of after they had tried, I don't know how many different things on price and term and this promotion and that promotion and everything in the world. They tried it all, and they finally decided they were going to have to eliminate late fees, which I thought, and I still believe, it was one of the most ill-advised, stupid business decisions I've ever seen. And they would argue the other side of it, I'm sure, to this day. They were convinced that the loss of, what was it, $300 or $400 million in profit would be offset by increased traffic. Not even close. Not even close.
They didn't realize the whole picture of it, to where if you do no late fees, you have to have enough movies here to supply the demand. Because if I don't have to bring, let's say, Blade Runner back for another 20 days, nobody else can rent it. So you don't get the turns, which means you don't get the rentals from it. So that's a huge thing right there. But once you're committed to it, you can't get it, you can't take it away. You see what I'm saying? So, and they committed everything to this no late fee thing, thinking that's where they're missing the boat. Well, it also opened up a whole nother can of worms, which they had to pay out more money for more rentals, but yet they're not getting the turns, which means they're not getting the revenue for those titles.
They, started with the no late fee policy as a franchisee. We chose not to participate in the program, which the franchisees that did choose to participate were the ones that kind of stayed a little, were able to stay and maintain a little bit longer. Those that chose to ride the wave with corporate, they lost their businesses because people didn't have any sense of urgency to return their movies. So they didn't have anything on the shelves to rent. So I really think that was kind of their kind of slow death.
They completely lost control of their inventory management. And to me, that was as big a part of it as giving up the revenue from the late fees. So my belief is that was you asked the question, what what kind of started it? Well, there was a lot of things that started it, but the late fee thing to me was the end of it.
And it's crazy because they could have. They could have lasted I mean, Redbox, who came into the scene a lot later, if I'm not mistaken, Redbox came, I want to say they came in 2002. Um, they outlasted Blockbuster. They lasted till last year. They closed and they went into bankruptcy themselves in 2024 of October of last year. They outlasted Blockbuster, if you can believe that. Why did they outlast Blockbuster when all they had was kiosks? All they had these little boxes that can barely hold 100 DVDs in them. Series of bad decisions.
So there's a lot of reasons. Blockbuster didn't go down because of Netflix only, but Blockbuster went down because they had a business model which was very, very difficult to change, and they didn't have the courage and the persistence to be willing to do the things that would have made it change.
And Blockbuster, knowing that the DVD came to the scene, was unwilling to accept that they needed to start buying DVDs to replace the fact that there was going to be customers looking for DVDs that did not want to rent VHS anymore. But they thought that they knew best, and that the customer was not going to buy a DVD player when they already had a VHS player. Not wanting to listen, not wanting to pivot, not wanting to adapt, not wanting to make changes. These were some of the decisions that Blockbuster kept making that really hurt them. It wasn't Netflix. It was a series of bad decisions. And never mind the fact that they changed so many different CEOs, CEOs during the time that they were open. I mean, they started with David Cook. From David Cook, they went into Wayne Huizenga. From Wayne Huizenga, they went into John Altialco. And then from John Altialco, they went into Jim Keyes. They just kept changing CEOs all the time. And every CEO that came in wanted to try something different to make the business better. But in the process of trying to make things different to make the business better, they lost focus on the big thing, which is basically listening to the customer and listening to the people who obviously interact with the customer that could give you the feedback that you need to make the changes. They didn't do that. And what happened, unfortunately. Now, if you're still interested in wanting to have that feeling, there is a place still open to this day that has, that there's a Blockbuster still physically open to this day in Bend, Oregon, that is still running. It's still doing their thing. You can go there. You can have that feeling. And they just recently opted out and coming out of their city and doing pop-ups. And they just started here last year here in Orlando, Florida, and the Florida Fairgrounds. They had a pop-up Blockbuster, and they did one also in Tampa, and they're starting to do that on the times where their business slows down, because although their community still supports them by actually renting movies out, it's not enough, and 80% of their revenue is selling merchandise. They're actually trying to pivot and make some changes into doing these pop-ups so they can raise money so they can maintain throughout the years. So this is a cool concept. That might be something I wouldn't mind doing.
But we're here, the greatest carnival on the planet, in Orlando, before the rain comes out.
Expanded, and it's just bigger and better than ever. So we cannot wait to check this out. All right, guys, let's go in. It's open.
We got 4 new hires.
Oh wow, looks right off the bat with the classic movie posters here. Check this out. Oh,
Blockbuster experience. We're a nostalgic Blockbuster pop-up. It is a walkthrough experience. There is no time limit. We have about 15,000 DVDs and VHSs, so feel free to look around. We do not know what we have, so everything goes out, so it is a treasure hunt. We do have a lot of pop-up areas around the whole entire store, so feel free to take as many members.
Okay, thank you.
You're an employee at this point, so you put the vest on.
Okay, I put the vest on.
Put the vest on. Let's get the vest on, and then
Wow.
feel free to walk around, look at all the movies.
Don't Tell Hollywood Video. I used to work for them.
Straighten the shelves out for us.
Thank you. It's Kim, right?
It is Kim.
Thanks, Kim. I'm Jay.
Thank you, honey.
Thank you.
And I'll be glad to take any photos if you need.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, smell.
that. I remember actually seeing that in the stores. So, all right, guys, we have Sandy from the last Blockbuster featured in the Netflix documentary. She still works at the last Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon. And how many years did you say?
This is my 20th year.
20th year.
Yep.
Now, how long has the store been in existence? When did it
The
open?
store actually opened in 1991 as
91.
a Pacific Video.
Okay.
And then we became Blockbuster in 2000.
Okay.
So that store has been a Blockbuster for 24 years, and then I've been there for 20 of those 24 years.
Wow.
So,
How many, all the changes that you've seen, it's probably just pretty mind-boggling.
it is. So my introduction was during the end of late fees in 2004, which was the peak of
Yes.
Blockbuster when it had the most stores
Okay.
across the country and in the world, actually. So yeah, it's been a wild ride. It is definitely a fun adventure and a cool place to walk.
So, have you, kind of experienced this whole transition from Blockbuster being kind of the premier place to get a movie into now kind of a really cool retro thing to hang out and have good memories? Like, what's that transition been like?
It's kind of been a whirlwind because, at the beginning it was great. It was exciting. We had so many stores. And then you go through the dip and all the stores closing and then Dish Network buying the company and closing all the corporate stores and not really sure how it was going to go. And, we were really not sure if we were going to last past 2018.
Right.
And then Alaska closed their stores and we became last one in America. And then the last one in Perth, Australia closed in 2019. We became last one in the world. And
Right.
everything just kind of just shot up. We did a documentary, as you talked about. I've done so much media.
Right.
We've done TV shows. We've done so much fun, cool things. So it's definitely an amazing experience. And I get to go and do fun stuff like this. And,
Oh, yeah.
And travel around. This is the first time we've gone outside of Oregon. We have done a couple of retro game events, where you'll see some signs around here from that.
Right.
In Portland, but we hadn't gone anywhere else. So this is exciting for us to kind of gauge people's excitement and see what people think and if it's something that we want to try to do across the country.
Oh yeah, when we saw this first setup last year at the Fort Wilderness,
Yeah.
it was much smaller, of course, but it was just so exciting. Even just seeing the marquee board over here, and remembering what it was like to walk into that in the store.
And that was something that Julie did as just a special Halloween thing, as for a little Halloween competition, created her own little one. So she's the one that reached out to me and said, hey, and she actually came out to Bend and visited me, and she's like, what can I do to help you do this, on a bigger scale?
Oh yeah.
Hope you guys enjoyed my take on what happened and what's the overall thought of Blockbuster. And I hope I gave you guys enough information to make your own decision of why Blockbuster failed. And if so, please leave me a like. Please share. Leave in the comments below what was your overall thought of this video, and what was your best memory on Blockbuster. I'll see you guys in the next one.